What's the current state of fusion technology in this country? What's the current state of fusion reactors in this country?
Well, we have, where's that report? Can't hear it?
It's right here.
We have a, yeah, that one there. You were asking what's the status of fusion now?
Yeah, fission. Right? That's not
Fusion.
Right.
Sure.
Well, in this report, which we have copies of here, there's a table which has a listing of all the various fusion experiment reactors going on around the world. In the U.S., we have the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. There's one in MIT. There's the Lawrence Livermore Lab. There's the General Atomic. Actually, this doesn't. Los Alamos. There's a bunch of experimental programs. In fact, our group was able to go on a tour of the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab earlier this year, and they've done some pretty amazing things. They actually got the first tokamak that actually got one of these threshold levels back in the 1980s. But again, their funding has been cut. One of the things that they showed us in the lab
Yes.
was this, huge. It was about almost as tall as this room. One of these small tokamak type devices, and they had the two parts of it, two machined halves basically, sitting there. And the whole thing had cost about $50 million to go that far. But the Department of Energy was not authorized to give them the next $50 million to do it, put it together. Now they made the obvious comment that this outfit called Solyndra got $500 million and went bankrupt, right? So obviously this is not about money. It's not about the cost.
Money for him.
Yeah, right.
Money for what he's into with the rich.
Yeah, sure. But the idea is that for, $50 million, they could put this machine together and get a proof of principle development. They were working on other even more advanced designs as well. But again, if we had an Apollo project type effort, if you think about what happened in the Apollo program, in 1961, when Kennedy first announced we had a mission to go to the moon, within the decade, and all that, as he even said in his speech, we don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know how we're going to get the materials we need to do it. We have to train the engineering people to do it. But we're going to do it.
But he also got us into Vietnam. I see
No.
a lot on him. There's a lot about him I don't see that so great.
He was opposed to the getting
He was
into
Who
opposed
got
to
us
it.
into Vietnam?
He was.
Who got us into Vietnam?
Johnson.
No,
It goes in-
Johnson ordered the bombing in Vietnam.
No.
Kennedy got
That
us
goes,
into
that goes
Vietnam.
back, it goes back to Eisenhower.
Huh?
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower took care of Europe. He had
Anyway,
nothing to do with Vietnam.
The point I'm making is that we declared that we had a mission for the nation, which was to put a man on the moon and return him safely by the end of the decade. That tested our abilities like nothing else. So that's what Kennedy said, right? And that kind of shows the point, that if you actually have a concentrated program, you could get these things done. If you had all the coordination of all these
Which
scientists.
president was industry the largest over? Wasn't it after the wars that industry was great here? And then somehow all this outsourcing. I don't like to blame Obama or any other president that hasn't been bought by the rich, anti-American, I'll say, because they're the same people, like you say, the Tea Party, that we need, the real original Tea Party.
Right.
I don't think the WASPs ever left control of this country, and to this day, that's what Clinton took Obama under his arm, and he took Obama to do Whitewater all over again, because people are afraid of color and race and all this other thing instead of being one-on-one. And I think
Well,
the
that's sort of
problem lies right there.
Yeah, well, that's
Because if we have industry here, we have less crime and everything.
Well, there's two things I'll point out. One is that at the end of World War II, we had the most powerful industrial base in the world,
Right.
the arsenal of democracy. We won the war not because we had better fighting ability on the ground.
They ran out of oil.
It's because we could outproduce. I mean, I don't know if this is exactly precisely a quote, but there was a report that Hitler had a big meeting with his top general staff, and he basically said, the only people I fear is America. He said, what are you talking about? They're way across the ocean. What are you talking about? And he said, because they have Detroit. You know, we could field 100 tanks and they could put out 1,000 tanks, you know, that kind of thing, right? Well, that's true. We were able to outproduce anybody else. Now, what happened at the very end of the war was that Roosevelt died before the end of the war. Truman comes in. Truman is actually controlled by these Wall Street and London banking interests. And he, as soon as the war is over, he starts taking down this industrial
All the
capability,
factories.
right? And instead of converting the war plants to producing the materials that we could have been using, we shut them down to a large degree. We couldn't do it all at once. But then when, starting under Nixon, when we took the dollar off the gold reserve and started going for this globalization, and remember what happened in '72, of course, was they created this phony oil crisis, which created OPEC and things like that. And not just our own country, but the whole world was basically put over the barrel, quote unquote. And a lot of the industrial capability was shut down. So this is what we have to turn around. This has been the legacy of the last really 50 years. We've been steadily going downhill, right?
Well, we've been outsourcing. That's our
Well, all right.
problem.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
down-
the,
that's
that's
what
what
down-
you see.
the main.
That's what you see.
That's
That's
the
what
main
downhill
thing.
Now the thing, speaking of the
That's why you
outsourcing
said
and all
downhill.
that,
That's what you.
That's
the
the same
Chinese
thing.
government
Okay.
has
I wasn't
realized
good,
that their
Chris.
whole model of just being an exporter to the West, to the United States and Europe, isn't functioning because the West and the United States and Europe are in an economic collapse. We're not buying. So what they're doing is they're transforming their economy to start developing inside of China and into Asia. They're building railroad lines that are linking up Asia all the way to Europe, right? For example, they're talking about building power plants, nuclear plants in South Asia, things of that nature, right? So they're beginning to make the adjustment to go for a more healthy direction. Now we should just join that instead of being stupid and go down the tubes.
We taught it that.
Of course. Why don't we just
don't
do what
follow
we
we
we should
knew
do
to
what we
begin
know
with.
how to do good, you
Right.
know?
Right, that's we did. We taught them agriculture and everything.
I'd like to point out that the,
Yeah.
and that the current, anyway, I'd like to point out that what we're doing right now is this movement is massively distributing the statement, Worse Than Weimar, from Lyndon LaRouche, the founder of this movement, who predicted the crash in 1971. He predicted the 2007-2008 crash. He predicted the whole thing, decades and decades ago. And what he demanded for Long Island was that Long Island would become a massive transportation hub, a shipping hub, to get things out west through New Jersey and so forth. This is still the potential. I mean, of course, think of another thing that LaRouche did, which is what he got into, what got him attacked, which was the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was the idea later called Star Wars, for anyone who's not familiar with it by that name, which would have turned Long Island, with Grumman and everything else, into a continual hub of research and development and scientific progress and physical production.
Well, we stay up pretty good though, even after the war and after the planes here, they got into the computers, so this.
That's not the same at all.
Pretty
It's not
good.
the
I know they're
issue-
different, but
Because what we face today
I
is
know.
worse than Weimar
Of
in that we
course.
have a transatlantic financial system, an economy that is nothing more than a house of cards. It's just monopoly money.
right.
And so LaRouche begins this statement, which I want everyone to take and take copies to distribute. This is what we are taking to everyone in D.C. We've gotten out thousands of copies in Washington, D.C., in Manhattan, in the financial centers. He begins by saying, I was born on September 8th, 1922, at the beginning of the collapse of the infamous the process of the infamous 1923 hyperinflation of Weimar Germany, Now the threat to the transatlantic economy is far worse and virtually immediate as long as Obama is in. And that's the point that I hope I did manage to convey. The fight for fusion, the fight to impeach, and the fight for Glass-Steagall, they manifest there in the same process. It's the question of actually having physical production, of actually having a culture, a constitution, a future. So that's one thing I do want to point out, bring to a point. We've got the room for about another 20 minutes, half hour. Is there anything else you want to raise?
Yeah, well, I learned recently from an activist friend about the Trans-Pacific Pact and how injurious it is that corporations can take over our land and take away the resources. You know, what can you have to say about it?
The only way to handle it is definitely to pass Glass-Steagall. I mean, there's been some rumblings in the past week of resistance to the fast tracking. Perhaps you heard.
Yeah.
She's referring to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a global a free trade agreement, globalization, and it absolutely has all of these things hidden in it that are not even hidden, that mean a takeover of internationalist cartels.
Is it too late, or?
Which is the Anglo-Dutch Empire. It's the empire that still exists today. Now, the best thing that I can say, maybe you have a comment on this, Art, but the best thing that I can say on this is that you've got to look towards Asia and the resistance. South Korea resisted in the past month the placing of an anti-missile defense system by the United States on their ground, because they said, you're going for war with China. We don't want to be involved in that. They refused to allow Obama to place it on their property, on their territory. Meanwhile, the Philippines have been resistant to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. South Korea as well. There is major resistance. And within China, the most important development that I could see was the one that Art was, I think, leading towards in discussion. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting that included Putin, Xi Jinping, the new Chinese president, and others from the Eurasian countries, what was discussed was, Xi said, we're going with the New Silk Road policy, which is a policy of massive development of high-speed rail and nuclear power and essentially development corridor across Eurasia, where the millennial-old Silk Road was, right? And that this would be a policy of economic cooperation for the benefit of all nations involved, of internal improvements in the model of basically the Transcontinental Railroad. Okay, this is a policy that the LaRouche movement has demanded and mobilized for within China and other parts of Southeast Asia since 1992. At a recent conference in LA about 2 weeks ago, a major Chinese economist credited Lyndon LaRouche entirely with the fact that China is currently adopting these policies. So half of the world's population is currently in the process of transformation on policies that this movement has fought for, and that are, as you said, there are the American policies that we founded and our great leaders like Lincoln created. Anyway, that's I think the hope, because the Trans-Pacific Partnership as a treaty, the only way you're going to crush that is by forging the opposite alliance, which is on fusion. Does that follow?
On fusion, you're talking about the rail system.
Yeah, I'm talking about this massive economic development, cooperative economic development fight.
Well, how far along is the Trans-Pacific Pact? I mean, is it
right.
going to be passed, or is there a chance?
I think there's a chance that it would be squashed, as from the reports that I have.
One thing that occurred recently in the last week, I think, is that a number of the congressmen basically said we're not going to go along with some fast track
right.
on voting up this Trans-Pacific Partnership. The fast track will basically allow them to do what Obama likes to do, which is to decide what the policy is, and then announce it, and then you can decide whether you like it or not. But the point I'm making is that one of the key guys on that was our longtime collaborator now is Congressman Walter Jones from North Carolina. He's both the initiator of this impeachment resolution against Obama, which prevented things like the Syria war. He's also the co-sponsor with Marcy Kaptur of the Glass-Steagall bill in the House. And he's one of he's the only congressman who's actually had the courage to actually address several of our national conferences by video. We,
Is he a Republican or?
he's a Republican from North Carolina. He represents the Camp Lejeune district in North Carolina. So, as he said, he was highly critical of Bush was going into Afghanistan without some congressional declaration of war. He was critical of Clinton before that on the Kosovo war. He was very consistent about this question of the Constitution comes first. Right? Only the Congress declares war, not some president. And we're not being attacked by any of these countries. This is not like, even in Pearl Harbor, Franklin Roosevelt went to the Congress the very next day and said, I'm asking you for a declaration of war. We were just attacked. It was obvious, right? But he went to the Congress first, and he said, we have to go to get this declaration of war.
So, I never really understood where this fast track came from. It came from prior presidents. It sounds very unconstitutional to me. I mean, it's clearly dictatorial, and how come it's not attacked as unconstitutional in the courts?
Well, it's the same, it's this global empire that we're fighting against. It really is. It's not,
Toward the corporate, the bank.
well, the Anglo-Dutch financial empire, that's what the cover. The Anglo-Dutch financial empire. It's really the same thing. I mean, this goes back 300 years now, I guess, really.
This
is a
what I see is
Because of the
problem
diamonds
we're
and the
having
oil and the
at
banking
that
getting
point is
concentrated in
politics.
the
And
Dutch.
what's wrong in this
You go back to the
country
creation of
is
European
I
central
think we
banking,
need
When
created-
was that?
1600s in Amsterdam.
for their
Oh, so,
own,
and
in the
it's
primary.
maintained its
It's a
superiority.
single
it's
system.
said-
Yeah.
It's never
Like an
been,
independent party where
The
you
Dutch
get
East Indies Company.
Democrats and Republicans and
And that was
It's-
a
Well,
private.
we're actually pulling
That's
that
what we
together.
need.
We are pulling that together. We
Let-
actually-
Let's take a couple questions from the back.
It seems to me that the keystone of your program is Glass-Steagall.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm a newcomer. I don't know a lot about Glass-Steagall. Can you explain to me what that would mean? What will it do for me?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of, it's simple in one sense, because when Glass-Steagall was first applied in 1933, it simply by law separated commercial banks, where you have deposits, savings and loans, commercial banks, from speculative investment banking and insurance. They were all separate, right? This was broken down step by step in the 1980s, and then it was finally repealed in 1999, the Graham-Leach-Wiley Act. Clinton
He
was
was-
signed it.
president
almost
at the
locked
time.
up.
Now, the point about it is this, if you bring back, what's happened in the country now is that since they repealed it, we've documented this explicitly, the amount of complete gambling that these Wall Street banks have gotten involved in, mortgage-backed securities, derivatives, everything else, is just astronomical, right? Quadrillions of dollars, right? So, but it's not real. If you put Glass-Steagall back into effect, as Lyndon LaRouche has said quite bluntly, it will bankrupt Wall Street. Meaning that the speculative operations will be exposed to be actually what they are, bankrupt.
But then isn't there going to be a fallout from that?
No, what he says is this, he's very clear about this. He's saying that would protect the normal functions of normal banks. So if Bank of America or Chase or whatever wanted to still function as a commercial bank, they'd have to get rid of their investment side completely. Well, maybe, the point is that there will be a reorganization, obviously. But your local,
Who would buy these things? I mean,
nobody
major
wants. That's why
companies
we're
spend all
we're
this
spending
stuff.
$85 billion a month buying these worthless toxic waste assets
Right.
off these banks. So our taxpayer money is going to bail out this worthless crap. And as Daniel presented, the amount of bank lending has collapsed, right?
What do they do with the toxic waste?
It's just an accounting trick. But
They put it on their
pretending
books.
They're pretending it's not bankrupt, worthless garbage by continuing to do these bailouts.
Well, these derivatives are probably in all mutual funds to a certain extent, or not?
It might be. I mean, here's the thing, though.
They are
You-
still-
To answer your question, really,
Plenty of them.
what LaRouche actually said was if you put Glass-Steagall through, you'll see all of a sudden the value of the dollar will go up. Your basic cost of living will go down because almost everything you touch has been speculated up in value and price because we're ultimately bailing out this gambling debt on top. It's like having a monkey on your back, you know?
But
You
that's
get
a
rid of
long
the
time.
habit.
But that all makes, that all makes sense to me, but how can you couple that to impeaching Obama if he had nothing to do with repealing Glass-Steagall? He wasn't even around at the time.
Well, no, that's not, he's been directly involved in stopping it from getting reinstated. He was also, as a senator, before he was president, he was actually the most vehemently in favor of the bailout policy. He was calling up these members of the Congressional Black Caucus because the first vote, remember the TARP bailout, they voted it down on Monday. By Friday, they had their arms twisted off and they voted it up, right? Obama was personally involved in telling these Congressional Black Caucus members, if you don't vote for this, you're not going to get anything from me when I become president. He knew he was going to become president, right? Anyway, so now, and
Yes.
you know, the point is that that's the kind of operation he was running. He was part of the operation to destroy this in the beginning.
If they ever saw where he came from, if they ever saw Acorn, nobody would have voted
Yeah,
for
but
it.
what a lot of people don't know, that Obama, before he even became a senator, was part of Acorn. And Acorn was a major influence in the housing bubble. All right, they were the ones that pushed the banks to give the minorities houses without any kind of credit. And if it wasn't for Obama being with Acorn and helping to push that scenario, our houses would be way up in value, not way down in value. So he's been at the helm of this right from the beginning.
I heard about his shady
Well,
background.
if you ever watched Acorn like I did,
When I
working
heard,
the street,
when I was warned
Pat,
about
what do you
his
gotta say?
shady background.
I would like
they
to
went
have,
in and
before we
took
leave
people's,
today,
innocent people's
some
houses.
indication of where we are in impeaching Obama. Are we
Great.
10%, 25%, 50%, and I hope it's 75%?
Yeah.
Here, here.
I hope you answer the question.
Yeah, well, again, he's had the worst week of his whole career. He's had the worst week of his
Well,
whole
does that mean
career.
we're 10%, 50%?
I
We're
think
all-
that.
He could always go on
I gotta ask you
vacation.
this, you know, how do you think that Douglas
Good at that.
MacArthur dealt with that? Are we 10% likely to win, are we 20% likely to win, are we
I
75%?
would buy a new rope and hang it.
My point to you, Pat,
Get a
is
new
that
rope and hang 'em.
there's only one thing to do, and that's to fight on the basis of winning. That's kind of what I was trying to convey at the
Power
outset.
of positive thinking.
I would say even more like the killer instinct. Okay, there's a way where people have to kind of like open up, take the lid off, stop thinking that there's things that you can't do. We've got to what do we got to do with the people here? Why would we call this
Gotta
meeting?
get the people
Why
in
would we call
control
this
of
meeting?
Obama, that's
What
what
are we
We're
we
gonna
be doing?
we're gonna have to take over the next month a series of, and then meet up again. And what are we gonna do? Well, look, there's like 20 different Tea Party groups across the island. All right. If people here, exactly, we got plenty of people here who may be associated with them. These groups have got to come together around the two primary issues, which is the bankruptcy of Wall Street and the fact that Obama must be impeached. Forget about anything less. That is compromise, it's pragmatism, and it's going to get you killed. Obama has got to be removed. There's no way to deal with it otherwise.
Well, if we don't
There's
stop
one-
the people above him, we'll get another Obama in and
That's
another
what-
color. It
that's-
doesn't matter. There's
That's
plenty
what
of people want to
Glass-Steagall
see.
does.
Glass-Steagall was
That's the
gonna
idea.
do.
Is that you have to
Do we have the
break the back
politics
of
to
the
do it?
financial
Yes.
empire behind Obama. Okay,
Use
so
your-
I'll go
use
for
it.
it. I'm going for anything that
So-
gets
so
the
that's-
powers that be.
so
I'm not worried
Well,
about
we've
it.
gotta
How do you do
move-
it when they have unlimited resources and they're
who's
20
gonna?
people in a room?
Yeah, well,
Wait a minute.
who do we represent?
Let me just
Yeah.
answer that question, because you're saying they've got unlimited resources and we
Right.
can't beat them. Well, the point is that they don't have unlimited, they're actually bankrupt. Glass-Steagall simply makes it official, you guys are bankrupt. You guys are nothing. You know, we're the people. It's our country, not yours.
I'm taking it back.
It's not our debt, it's your stupid debt.
Yes,
It just seems like everybody is like, even like with the IRS going after people that back, you know, the opposite side. These people,
Very
I think they're
powerful.
ruthless.
Let me
I
give you an
think that
example.
they would squash you if
I
they
know,
knew
look.
what you were doing here.
Think about what happened in 1989 in East Germany.
He's right.
East Germany was the most tyrannical, dictatorial police state. 1 out of 4 people were part of the Stasi, police informant apparatus. Well, at a certain point, there was so many people basically saying, we're the people. We're just das Volk, that all their tanks and guns didn't mean anything. And one week, the dictator there, Erich Honecker, was bragging about how we're going to have another 1,000-year Reich of socialist, paradise, and a week later or 2 weeks later, he was running through the hills. So things like that are about, we're seeing an American population that really is waking up. You're part of that, right? You're sort of the vanguard in a certain way because you've taken a lot of
We're the
issues
ones
yourself.
going out. I'm afraid of the kids that are coming up, because what they're learning in the colleges and the
That's
schools
Gotta
is
change it.
contrary to everything that you're talking about.
I know, and that's why we got to wait quick. You
Eh?
can't wait around. Yeah.
Okay.
To accept
And not to close.
They don't pick white flag, they got the
Oh, thank you. Over here? Okay. All right. My name is Jessica White. I'm a New York City school teacher. I teach middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science. And one of the things that I want to convey to the group here, and thank you all for coming, and I understand all your questions and all your concerns, and that's why, as like one of you, I want to say something. First of all, it's not party, it's policy. That's the first thing. It's not if you're a Tea Party person or a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. We're citizens. That's the first thing. It's policy. The second thing is that we have to consider what Glass-Steagall is. This operation has been going on for years. They attack any group that tells the truth, that has any type of solution to the tyranny that's going on now. Their biggest thing is to keep us from understanding what we need to do. The banks are already bankrupt because when the bubble hit and they got bailed out, they're still being bailed out. They have nothing. What we need to understand is that we have to bring that out into the open. They are being still bailed out to the tune of $85 billion a month just to keep their secret a secret. Obama caused the sequestration, what they call cutting this, cutting that, cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting Medicaid. And Medicaid is not just minorities and poor people eating up all your food stamps and taking all your money. So Medicaid also has to do with caring for the elderly, caring for disabled people. Those kinds of things also come through Medicaid. All right? So we have to really put up a fight as citizens. We have to come together and understand that Glass-Steagall, if you look at this pamphlet, and this is a pamphlet that is fantastic, Glass-Steagall was taken down deliberately. The 1933 bill was taken down deliberately so that they could go into our bank accounts, into these derivatives, into the people's homes and take their homes under these foreclosures. And many people were duped into buying homes under these, non-fixed mortgage rates, all right, where they would go sky high after 3 years. My mom lost her home because of it, because she was an elderly person, didn't understand what all the refinancing stuff meant, signed away her house that she was on the brink of paying for over the 30-year mortgage that she had. And because we couldn't figure out which bank owned her mortgage, my sister and I couldn't even stop it once it was in momentum, once the momentum of taking her house was there. Okay, and this woman was 80 years old and lost her house. So we have to come together and decide that Glass-Steagall needs to be put back in place. It will crush the oligarchy. They are still there. All right, it will crush them. It will make all of their schemes and all of their things come transparent. sequestration will stop. That's an Obama baby. All right? He was the one that put that in place. I'm an African American woman. One second, honey. I'm an African American woman, and I know that Obama put that in place himself. He is a tool of the oligarchy. No matter what color he is, we don't know where he came from for real. Okay? So when you talk about who will replace him, I've heard people ask me, who will replace him? Anybody can replace him. We didn't know him before he came, so some of these young people in the back here, they're worthy of being president because they will be of the right idea, the right intent to make our country strong again. The intent of the people who will take over after Obama will make our country strong again. That's who will take over. That's who will be president. Even Biden would be better for a little while. Okay? Well, he'd be there for a little while, and then we could replace him with somebody else. But we must remember what's going on. We have to get Glass-Steagall back in, and the way we do that is to bombard our Congress people, pass the word to other people that we need to call these guys. They shut down the government on purpose to stop Glass-Steagall from going through. We need to bombard them. We need to make this movement across our nation. That's the first thing. How do we do it? We find out where all these little meetings and stuff are going on where they don't tell the truth, like the thing that Daniel was talking about the other night, where they're afraid. People are scared to stand up and say what the truth is. We go there and we stand up and we say the truth. Okay? The other thing is, once we understand that Glass-Steagall is first, impeaching Obama is next. And it could be the opposite. It could be impeach Obama first and Glass-Steagall next. But either way, they run neck and neck together. And then we have to get rid of this tyrant, this person who is a tool of the empire. That's what it's about. And that's what we have to do. So we have to decide ourselves that we're going to make this happen. And once we did, remember the revolution, the American Revolution was in secret. The people that met, they could have been hung for tyranny, for being traitors to the crown and all that kind of stuff. All right? It was a small group of people who decided we are going to become a republic, we're going to declare our independence, and we're going to make this nation. And so as scary as it is, that's what we have here. Like Daniel was saying, it's leadership. A few of us can do a whole lot. Spread the word. That's all. I spread the word. Even my sister. Even my sister was an Obama lover until I said, look, I almost got kicked out of her house one Thanksgiving. It's like but let me tell you, when she retired and she saw that the Social Security situation was everything that I said it would be, and most of her well, not most, she's got a good retirement, but a lot of her income is from Social Security, even with her pension. And when I said your pension is in trouble and Social Security is in trouble, she said, what's that LaRouche stuff you're talking about? Okay? So this is the fight. This is what we have to do. Thank you.
You can't sue the government. You cannot, just like certain prescriptions or vaccines you take, if they're adversely effective to you, you can't sue them.
That's what's wrong with doctors and lawyers.
I'm not saying it's good. Like I said, I don't trust all doctors. There are some good doctors. There are a lot of bad doctors. It's up to you to find the good ones and get rid of the bad ones. But you need to understand what Obamacare means. It means that a majority of the elderly are not going to get treated. At 75, you need a hip replacement. I don't think you're going to get it. All right, you need a bypass. It's not going to happen. You get cancer, they'll make you comfortable. All right, and it doesn't even matter if you're elderly. If you're 40 and the doctor says you got a 30-40% chance of recovery, well, I'm sorry, but we got a guy over here that's got a 50% chance of recovery, and we're going to have to give him the money. That's where Obamacare is going. So when we say we need to get rid of it, you need, again, when you speak to your congresspeople or your neighbors or your senior friends, you need to explain to them. They need to make it known they don't want this. That we need to go to a plan where money can be put aside for your care. You have maybe a high deductible plan, and you can put money aside in a bank account, tax deferred, so that you have money to treat yourself.
It sounds like what George Bush wanted us to do.
Can I cut in at this point, Judy?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to be clear that, first of all, we have a full fact sheet on Obamacare, and that this is a Hitler policy, this is mass murder. What we do need, I want to be very clear, is we need to abolish the insurance giants. And we have to go with a single-payer program. Okay, that is obvious because everyone deserves health care. This goes to what I was trying to get to at the outset. The issue today is a certain solidarity, which, given this fantastic meeting, it's going to be pretty clear. We have to rally.
Yes.
We have got to rally. Nothing's going to work unless we rally around a solution. And what we are urgently doing now is we are organizing every layer of the population. Take a look at the video that in the presentation that Art did. Now, first of all, let me pull back because I didn't even say this, and I really needed to introduce Art as such. Art in 1980 was absolutely crucial in the passing of the McCormick bill that he described that first got fusion funding off the ground. Art is a person standing right there. You know, these are leaders right here. We can absolutely transform this. We're organizing into the fusion layers, into the scientific layers, on what is the future going to be that's going to inspire people. And I'm holding right here, you know, in case people are asking about what's going on with impeaching Obama, this is from 2 weeks ago. This is an image, a photo of the coal miners rally that was held on the lawn of the Capitol, with a bunch of people, 2,000 coal miners, union coal miners, holding up signs saying, many of them holding up signs saying, "Save America, impeach Obama." Okay, and they were addressed by a Democratic senator. Just look at things with a fresh eye. This world is not what it once was. Everything is different. And it's on that basis that I'm urging you all to join this movement and to the best extent you can, to become a leader in the fight to impeach and get Glass-Steagall. That means that we should plan a meeting. I think that in a month from today, we should have another meeting out here. All right? And by that time, we're going to be in touch with everyone on what it is that you can do in organizing the people, the networks that you have. You know, the next time we have a meeting, we should rent a much larger hall, and we should get 150 people there. That would be the right thing to do. And if you can tell, there's a huge amount of rage in everyone you know. All your family and friends are enraged at what's happening. We have to channel this. I want to close it right now. We should certainly discuss afterwards. I'm going to close it right now, and I want to urge people to contribute to this movement. That is something you can absolutely do. We urgently need funds. And this allows us to do the work in DC and across the country, such that we are recruiting people, emphatically young people, to stop what they're doing and engage themselves 24/7 in a battle to save the country. There's a young man who's coming out from Chicago on Tuesday to move to New Jersey. He quit his job as a leasing agent because he wants to devote his life to that fight that Art went through, to the future. And that's what uniquely we're able to do. What LaRouche has forecast is you better bet your butt that it's going to happen. If we don't get this done, we will be in a situation worse than Weimar. But if we do get it done, we have the most beautiful Renaissance that mankind has ever seen. So I think we have to get out of here pretty soon, but I want to urge everyone to purchase literature. All the leaflets, take them. But we have to raise funds in order to print all of the literature. And contribute what you can. Thank you.
That industry was great here, and then somehow all this outsourcing. I don't like to blame Obama or any other president that hasn't been bought by the rich, anti-American, I'll say, because they're the same people, like you say, the Tea Party, that we need, the real original Tea Party. I don't think the WASPs ever ever left control of this country. And to this day, that's what Clinton took Obama under his arm, and he took Obama to do Whitewater all over again because people are afraid of color and race and all this other thing instead of being one-on-one. And I think
Well,
the
that's sort of a-
problem lies right there.
Yeah, well, that's
Because if we have industry here, we have less crime and everything.
well, there's two things I'll point out. One is that at the end of World War II, we had the most powerful industrial base of energy was not authorized to give them the next $50 million to do it. Put it together. Now, they made the obvious comment that this outfit called Solyndra got $500 million and went bankrupt, right? So obviously, this is not about money. It's not about
Yeah, it is.
the cost.
Money for him.
Yeah, right.
Money for what he's into with the rich.
Yeah, sure. But the idea is that for, $50 million, they could put this machine together and get a proof of principle development. And we're working on other even more advanced designs as well. But again, if we had an Apollo project type effort, if you think about what happened in the Apollo program, in 1961, when Kennedy first announced we had a mission to go to the moon, within the decade, and all that, Los Alamos, there's a bunch of experimental programs. In fact, our group was able to go on a tour of the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab earlier this year. And they've done some pretty amazing things. They actually got the first tokamak that actually got one of these threshold levels back in the 1980s. But again, their funding has been cut. One of the things that they showed us in the lab was this, huge. It was about almost as tall as this room. One of these small tokamak type devices. And they had the two parts of it, two machined halves basically, sitting there. And the whole thing had cost about $50 million to go that far. But the department, as he even said in his speech, we don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know how we're going to get the materials we need to do it. We have to train the engineering people to do it. But we're going to do it.
But he also got us into Vietnam. I see
No.
a lot on him. There's a lot about him I don't see that's so great.
He was opposed to the getting
He
of
was
the
Who
deal.
opposed
got
to
us
it.
into Vietnam?
He was.
Who
no.
got us into Vietnam?
Johnson.
No,
It goes in-
Johnson ordered the bombing in Vietnam.
No.
Kennedy got
That
us
goes,
into
that goes
Vietnam.
back. It goes back to Eisenhower. Actually.
Huh?
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower took care of Europe. He had
Anyway,
nothing to do with Vietnam.
The point I'm making is that we declared that we had a mission for the nation, which was to put a man on the moon and return him safely by the end of the decade. That tested our abilities like nothing else. And that's what Kennedy said, right? And that kind of shows the point, that if you actually have a concentrated program, you can get these things done. If you had all the coordination of all these
Which
scientists.
president was industry the largest over? Wasn't it after the war?
What's the current state of fusion technology in this country? What's the current state of fusion reactors in this country?
Well, we have, where's that report? Can't hear it?
It's right here.
We have a, yeah, that one there. You were asking what's the status of fusion now?
Yeah, fission.
Fusion.
Right.
Sure.
Well, in this report, which we have copies of here, there's a table which has a listing of all the various fusion experiment reactors going on around the world. In the U.S., we have the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. There's one in MIT. There's the Lawrence Livermore Lab. There's the General Atomic. Actually, this doesn't